This morning will be the last in this Contagious Christianity series, and it's called Form or Substance. It's funny that Justin was talking about bowling this morning. How many of you like to bowl? Yeah? Just kind of casually like to go bowl. I'm not the best bowler. But I love it, and I really look good doing it. You know, I hold the ball. My wife's laughing at me. I hold the ball right, you know. My approach is perfect. I mean, I got a perfect approach. Everything. And I swing, boy, I kick that leg out. Everything's perfect. Quit laughing at me. My back swing is strong. I throw that ball about 100 miles an hour. And I look like I really know what I'm doing. My form is all there. But I'm a terrible bowler. I throw that ball, you know, you watch it on TV and you see the people that really can throw it, and that ball it hooks all the way over. I try to do that every time. It's just straight or left. It never goes like it's supposed to. It never looks right. I almost every time too. It's like every time I really think I've thrown a good ball, it's a split every time. I mean, I've thrown a perfect ball. Golf the same way. I've got a beautiful swing, and I used to be a pretty good golfer. When I golfed a lot. But my swing is there still. I'm just not a good golfer anymore. It's all form, and there's no substance there. The reason I'm talking about this morning is because I believe there's a chance that a lot of our spiritual lives look like this. We have really good form, but our substance isn't there. It's all packaging and no substance. In other words, we have religion, but we don't have a relationship that we're supposed to have. And there's a difference, you know. Religion is good form. That's what religion really is. It's having the good form. It looks good on the surface, but it has no depth a lot of the time. And a relationship, on the other hand, is having that depth and having that substance. And it's pretty difficult in our culture to focus on the interior. I kind of talked about that this morning a little bit. I mean, we spend a lot of money dressing up on the outside trying to get people's attention. I don't do that. There are days we get tired of, you know, making sandwiches and take them to work. So we go, you know, and buy this little pretty packaged ramen noodle thing. And you're paying for, yeah, Janice, I know. You're paying for the packaging. You know, that's all about form too. You're getting tired of something and you're paying even for the microwavable dinners or whatever. It's packaged real pretty and you're paying for the form. You're not paying for the substance. There's not really a lot in there usually. Every year, People magazine, they publish, you know, 50 most beautiful people. I've never been on there. This is one of their most popular issues, and it's because people really like to see beauty. People are, you know, and it makes people jealous for whatever reason, and the world sees people as beautiful like that. And if you look beyond their perfect teeth and their perfect hair, a lot of the times you're going to see that they're way more messed up than us, more than likely. You know, they live in rehab centers. They have lawyers always dealing with things. They have all this stuff going on. And they may look pretty on the outside, but their substance is not there. The fact is, good form is easier to maintain than substance. It's easier to maintain a look of something than it is to really be living what you're supposed to be living. And that's an important lesson for us. We're part of a religious heritage that says form matters. And it does. Form does matter. Things that we do matter. The Lord's Supper, how we worship, the baptism, all that stuff matters. And I believe we're right in that fact, but the danger for us is that once we really hone in on that and understand that, we just kind of settle into something, we think the form is how we're supposed to be, it's just the form. You know, as long as we maintain like we're looking like a Christian, that's the way we're supposed to be. You know, having that good package, looking like it's something that's a Christian. And that is important. But when we really take a look at ourselves and see what's on the inside, then we're going to see what we're made of, what our substance is really about. As we end our discussion this morning on evangelism, I want to spend some time looking at the words that Casey read this morning in Matthew 5, verses 13 through 16. And if we're going to be serious, I know it's kind of weird putting this as evangelism, but if we're going to be serious sharing our faith, we have to develop the interior as well as the exterior. We've been talking about doing outward things, but we need to develop ourselves first. It's going to start with us. This morning, if you want to turn back to Matthew 5, starting in verse 13. Matthew 5, 13 through 16. You're the salt of the earth, but the salt has become tasteless. How can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on the lampstand. And it gives light to all those who are in the house. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Now, if you've spent more than 20 minutes in a church building, you've heard that you're the salt of the earth. This is something we've all heard at one time or another if you've been inside a church building. And most of what we just read here kind of makes you feel bad about yourself. It does to me anyway. And the salt scripture, it's so familiar. It's just become part of our vernacular, part of our vocabulary. I think I've told you guys before that me and Claire's passwords to a lot of our things, I don't know why I'm telling you this, it's in that verse there, and we use that as our passwords to a lot of our emails and stuff like that. And you guys don't have to hack into my email, there's nothing there. You see, I want you to notice the second part of this verse where Jesus is talking about form or substance. You see, form is looking like salt. We can look like salt. That's not hard to do. It's not what it can be, but it's not the hard part. Being salty is the hard part, having that substance there. The question that needs to be raised is how can we make an impact for God? How can we maintain our Christian lives in a world where there's all this temptation, all this peer pressure around us to do the opposite? How can we live for Christ without becoming like the world? It's hard. Without losing our saltiness. We have to maintain that saltiness. The problem comes when we lose the saltiness. Matthew 5:13 says, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? I struggled with this for a while because I thought, the way my mind thinks is, if it's salt, it's got to be salty. How can salt lose its saltiness? And actually, it really can't. If you look into the history of how everything is, and I'll get into that in a second, of how they're talking back in the content of back in the times here, a guy named Chuck Swindoll, who's a preacher, he makes a real good observation. He says that when salt gets covered with mud and dirt, it loses its bite and it loses its impact. But a lot of times they got their salt from the Dead Sea. That's where they got their salt from. And when it lost its saltiness is when it got covered in dirt and was trampled underfoot by men. So it lost its saltiness. So sometimes we get mixed up with the dirt of the world. That's kind of, you can look at it like that. You know, we're the salt and we have saltiness. But we get mixed up in the things of the world. We compromise our credibility as servants of Christ. And people look at us and say, you know, there's another hypocrite. He's doing all this stuff on the outside. He's got all this form. He looks like salt, but he's not acting like he's salty. But if we live the lives of mercy and purity and righteousness and all these things we're supposed to be, the world will take notice. Talked about that this morning, and all these stories of the young people it's a blessing and it's encouraging to me to hear these young kids taking stands for things and really not showing just the salt, but really being salty and having that substance. They're backing up what they believe in. And, you know, that'll make people say, you know, what is this? What do these people have? Why are they doing these kind of things? Why are they living like this? They live in the same place I live. They're in the same town I'm in. They work at the same job I work at. Why do they act different than me? You know, they can conquer this. They can conquer that. They don't get stressed out like other people do. What causes that? And the way we live our lives against the grain is what makes the world take notice. Being salty, having that substance. Another thing we need to say about salt is it's one of the most useful domestic things ever made. Salt is good on everything. Salt is good on, well, you know, I need to stop eating so much salt, I guess. But I like salt on lots of things. Salt's good on watermelon. Who knew? You know, right? You can sprinkle on popcorn, potatoes, whatever. You can gargle it. There's so much use for salt out there. And I was even reading on the internet that you can use salt to clean pots and pans and sinks and tubs. Did not know that. And so we take it for granted. You know, it's one of the most useful blessings we have. So when Jesus is saying to them, you are the salt of the earth, he's saying, you're one of the most useful things I have. Most useful blessings I have. In the same way, salt can do a lot of different things to people's lives too. And you can do a lot of different things to bless people's lives. I read this week a story about Dr. James Dobson that you may not know, you may know. He was a school teacher a long time ago, and from 1960 to 1963. In June of his last year, he had to say goodbye to 25 teary-eyed kids. One of those kids called him up 12 years later. Dr. Dobson remembered her as an overweight 7th grade girl with a low self-esteem. She only had one friend in the whole school. She and Dr. Dobson talked on the phone about the good old days. Then she asked him, "Where do you go to church?" He told her, and she asked if she could visit. He told her she could. The next week she came. In the coming months, she became a vibrant Christian. A few months after her initial visit, Dobson asked her, "Julie, I want to ask you a question. Will you tell me why you went to so much trouble to obtain my unlisted number and call me last fall?" She said, "When I was in 7th grade in junior high school, you were the only person in my life who treated me with respect and believed in me, and I wanted to know your God. That is a result of focusing on substance over form." That's what she saw in him. She saw him living like that. Salt, it's a hidden influence. Really, it's kind of a hidden thing, but it's powerful. And we go to the next part of the verse, and we're talking about light. Light's different, far different. Light, on the other hand, it's visible, and it's revealing. There's so many scriptures about light in the Bible. But in our text this morning, Jesus mentions two sources of light. The first, he talks about the city on a hill. He says, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden." So those listening to Jesus in that day would have immediately thought of cities that were built on mountains. You see, if you go overseas and you go to those places, there's a lot of cities built on top of these mountains and hills. And they cannot be hidden because they're on a hill. It doesn't matter where the light's at, you're going to see them. And the light shining on them even brings it out even more. They just glisten in the sun, and you couldn't hide them. And so Jesus is saying, if your life has depth, if you work on your substance, then your life is going to be as beautiful as that city on the hill. And that can't help but show itself every day in every situation. You're always going to see that city on the hill. For example, let's say our friends at work don't like the boss, and this is it's like that a lot of places. I'm not going to say anything. And they take turns criticizing the boss behind their back. Well, let's say they ask you, what do you have to say? And I'll get in these situations where people are talking about other people, and they'll say, "Well, what do you have to say? What do you think?" And man, you've got to be careful. You got to be careful what you're saying. We're talking about opportunities this morning. This is an opportunity right here to show what you're made of. This is just to show your substance. When they ask you what you think about the boss, you might say, "I've been praying for him or her." They've got a lot of responsibility. It's hard. I can only imagine how hard it would be. Can you imagine the pressure of trying to manage all these people and trying to get all these things done? See, you're trying to show that you're not going to go that way. You're not going to go the low road. You're going to go the high road. And you're shining your light, like that city on a hill. That's what you're doing. And you're demonstrating that you can be trusted as well. Better believe me, when you have opportunities like that, you don't blow those, because those can really mess up things down the line. You don't know what opportunities you're blowing right there. So first, you're demonstrating that you can be trusted. Then, even when you have a chance to take a pot shot at somebody, you don't do it. And this is what I call integrity. That's what I think is integrity. Secondly, you're showing the world that you live by a different set of values. That you're not like the rest of the people. You're trying to be different. You're letting people know in a non-judgmental way as well. That's a good way to do it, out of love. That you're living your life for an audience of one. You're living your life for God. This is not about other people. I'm not trying to gossip just to fit in with you guys. I'm not doing this. I'm not taking shots at people. 1 Peter 2:12 says, "Keep your behavior excellent among the Gentiles, so that in the thing in which they slander you as evildoers, they may, because of your good deeds, as they observe them, glorify God in the day of visitation." So you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. There's a second type of light source in verse 15. I love going into the history behind all this stuff of you just see, light in the lampstand here and all this stuff, and really understanding why they had lampstands. It says, "Nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all those who are in the house." Homes back then generally had one source of light. That's all they had. And it pretty much was in the one room, in which, back then, it was pretty much the room served as a combination living, dining area. It was just kind of a spot there. And to one side, you'd have they'd kept their chests with baskets and stuff in it, which reminds me of when we lived, me and Claire lived at a place before, we had so many mice in that house, we had to keep everything in this basket, in Tupperware and all this good stuff. And I'm sure it's kind of what they were having to do back then. It's kind of something very similar. But on the other side would be this room and just a table, which they used for supper. That's where they ate at. And a candle or lamp would be carefully placed on that. They knew it so they could shine light across the whole place. And as the family gathered for supper, they turned their backs to the darkness, and the light illuminated their faces. That's how they saw each other. That's what they did. And so those listening to Jesus in this time right here, and of course this is the Sermon on the Mount that we're reading from, knew the importance of that single source of light in the room. They understood how important that light was. And when Jesus mentioned the idea of someone taking a bowl and putting it on top of that light, it's kind of humorous because you can picture them laughing at it, thinking, that's stupid. That's foolishness. I mean, it's kind of funny when you think about it. When was the last time you heard somebody say, I just got this beautiful new lamp, let's put a blanket or a bowl on top of it, it'd look beautiful. That doesn't happen. Jesus implies that no one in the right mind would do that. Instead, they put the lamp on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. So in other words, in the same way a lamp is meant to shine its light for all of us to see, you're meant to shine the light of God's love for all to see. Every one of us. We are the lamp of God in a dark world. That's what we are. We're the lights. Why is it important for our lights to shine? Well, in verse 16 we see this, why it's so important that we let our light shine. Jesus says, let your light shine before men in such a way so that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Kind of talked about this morning. Did you see that right there? Did you understand what that's talking about? I wonder if we've got this figured out so much that we think we're right on this all the time and we actually don't have this figured out. You know, we have a laundry list of reasons and it makes us feel good, like we have to be helpful and we want folks to do nice things for us and we want to do all these things, but why are we really doing things? The last part of that right there, glorify your Father in heaven. Talked about this morning. Every opportunity we have is to glorify our Father in heaven. This is not about people looking at us and saying, look at that, those are the things that person's doing. You know, we're thankful for all these things these kids are doing this morning, but this is the glory of God. Is what this is. That's what we're praising. That's what we're happy about. These young people can bring glory to God just the same as we can. And look again at what Jesus says in verse 16. Let your light shine before men in such a way so that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. That's the reason. We do our good deeds so that God can get praise, not so that we can get praise. It's not about us. It's not about us receiving praise from God for this. It's about us giving God the praise. And if this becomes our focus, then it's going to be much easier for us to let our light shine. When I understand, when I'm thinking of a situation, and memorizing Scripture is a good way to do this because you're always thinking about things. What you're doing is for God all the time. It's easier to let your light shine because you're not trying to just to be somebody you're not. You're doing something for God. Jesus teaches that a person's faith is to be openly shared and shared with others who are watching. And it's to shine forth for everybody to see, not so we can build ourselves up. And I've been guilty of that past. I know I've done things that, you know, at the time I thought, well, I'm just being helpful, and I stopped to help somebody, and I was like, all right, Billy, you know, you did a good thing there, but that's not what it's about. That's not what it's about. In other words, you also, Proverbs 13:9 will say that, you know, the light of the righteous shines brightly, but the lamp of the wicked is snuffed out. And you don't have to go out of your way to draw attention to yourself. It's not something you have to do. You want to purposely just go and be this happy person all the time. That's not what you do. You don't say, "Hell, you know, look how happy I am. I'm a Christian." That's not what you're supposed to do. That's not a bad thing. That's not what we're supposed to do. So, brothers and sisters, if you're living the way Jesus wants you to live, everybody is going to be able to see this light. Everybody's going to be able to see that you are not just form, you are substance too. You're living it. You're walking and talking what you believe. It can't be hidden. The light can't be hidden. Our lives should be lives that reflect something more than the world has. When people look at us, they need to see that we have something different. Because we have more than they have. That's the reason why. We have more than they have. There's a good reason they can see that. We have Jesus. We have hope. We have salvation because of the sacrifice that was made for us. The joy that we've gotten from Him. All these different things, you know, because of His involvement in our lives are different. Our lives should shine brighter. And we can't live shallow lives because of this. This is not something you do. This morning, if He does not make a difference in your life, if your light's not shining, if you've lost your saltiness, then you either need to be born again through the waters of baptism, which we can do that this morning, or you need to repent of the sin that you have. Gain that saltiness back. Don't just look like a Christian, actually be one. And rekindle that fire of your first love. I remember when I became a Christian, that fire I had right after being baptized. And then you kind of can lose that from time to time. But you can gain that back as well. So if you have any of these needs this morning, then please come forward as we stand and as we sing.